Nina, welcome to the U.S. European Media Hub. It's
Thank
great
you.
having you here today. So tell us a little about yourself and where you're from.
Well, I've been living in Brussels for 6 years. I'm both American and Canadian by citizenship. I did a Fulbright scholarship in 2006 to 2007. I was a EU-Schuman Fulbright grantee, and I did my grant in London at the London School of Economics, and I studied European political economy there.
Wonderful. What led you to discover Fulbright?
Well, actually, the Career Center at my undergraduate university, which was American University in Washington, D.C., helped me identify different grant opportunities because I knew I wanted to do a master's degree, but I also knew that I needed some help funding that, basically. So my Career Center actually guided me towards the Fulbright and helped connect me to some professors at my university who were very knowledgeable about how to apply for Fulbrights and were able to help coach me through that process.
Okay, so there are Fulbright student programs in approximately 150 countries around the world. And what makes the Fulbright-Schuman program special, and how did you decide it was the right one for you?
Well, I had already done quite a bit of European studies. For example, in 2004, I actually studied abroad during my junior year of college in Brussels and learned just sort of the foundations about the EU. So it was already something that I knew I wanted to explore further for my master's degree. So that's what made the EU-Schuman Fulbright grant a good fit for my interests.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your grant experience and the application process? And a little
Yeah,
details
sure.
on that?
Let's see, I'll start with the application process. So I think what made my grant application successful were things like, for one, that I had some great coaches. My professors and the Career Center at American University really helped me a lot with putting together my application. It was really important to have their input because it's important that the application is clear and concise. I mean, you have to fit everything onto 1 to 2 pages, so it really has to be tight. And having the professors review my applications was really helpful in that respect. Also, they kind of coached me to really reach out and explore the feasibility of my project. So I, for example, did lots of research into the London School of Economics and other universities as well that could potentially support my project. I looked into different courses that I would take and professors that I would work with specifically at those universities to really explore how I would actually go about doing the project. And I think another thing that one of the professors flagged to me was that when doing a Fulbright year, they don't want you to just be in your books and in the classroom 100% of the time. They really want you to experience the cultural exchange. So getting connected to the community was something that was also important to reflect, I think, in the application. So I also looked into some NGOs that I might get involved with when I was in London.
Wonderful. So can you sort of tell us a little bit more about the project and the proposal, and what was your project?
Sure. So my project proposal was, well, mainly it was to do a master's in European political economy. So that was the main project. But then within that, I said that I would research the EU's policies and how they influence or don't influence democratization in the Middle East or North Africa. And in practice, when I actually did the courses and got to know a bit more what the lectures were going to be like in more detail, and also once I got a better feel for the issues in European political economy in general, I just kind of realized that the project wasn't actually, it's not that it wasn't feasible, it's just that the research didn't line up and that I wouldn't have enough of a case to build a dissertation out of it, basically. So I could say that I explored the topic, but I was able to resolve my questions actually pretty quickly. So in terms of having to come up with a dissertation then in a proper project to present to Fulbright at the end of the day, I ended up having to go in another direction that was more aligned with the master's that I was pursuing. And so I ended up doing it on genetically modified organism policy in different European countries, looking specifically at the UK and also France and Spain, and then doing a cross comparison of the different political angles that they have taken.
Interesting. And your professors were keen on you changing, and there wasn't a problem with changing your project?
No, there was not. There was no problems. I just had to notify the UK Fulbright Commission that I intended to change directions, and they were okay with with it.
Wonderful. So can you tell us also about your experience in working and dealing with the UK Commission?
Sure. Well, so I was an EU Fulbright or EU Schuman Fulbright grantee, which kind of put me in a strange gray zone in terms of who was actually managing my grant. But in the end, it was actually the UK Fulbright Commission who completely took over my grant. And I understand that now the way that this is administered has changed a bit since I did my program. But when I was doing it, that's the way that it was handled. It was completely decentralized to the UK Fulbright Commission. And so I was treated essentially like another UK Fulbright grantee when I was there. And I participated in lots of different events that they organized for their Fulbrighters. Like we went to a sort of field trip for the Fulbrighters in Liverpool, which was really cool. We did some tours and had some receptions there. And throughout the year as well, there were lots of alumni gatherings with UK Fulbrighters who had done Fulbright grants in the US.
Interesting. So do you have any tips for US students that are currently applying to Fulbright programs in Europe?
Well, I think for the EU Schuman Fulbrighters, who are those who are interested in that particular grant, I would say that you don't necessarily need to look at the EU. You can also look at different parts of EU policies. So it can be broader than just looking at the Europeanization of different things and whatnot, and that also it's. I think it's quite encouraged now to do projects in different countries as well. Like I know the person who had a grant that I was put in touch with beforehand had done his project in a couple different countries. And I think that's quite an interesting thing to do as well.
Okay. And just to talk a little bit about visa and how the process is in getting one, is it difficult, and sort of your experience in going through that?
Well, to get the visa for going abroad to do the Fulbright, it was very simple and straightforward. The only complicated thing for me at the time was that I actually had no country of residence when I was applying for my visa to go study in the UK. So I actually had to fly back because I was kind of on temporary séjour, temporary vacation, I guess, in Belgium at the time. And then I had to actually fly to New York in order to get the visa to go to London. But otherwise, it was it was very easy to get the visa. In terms of getting a visa, though, for Belgium, that's definitely more complicated. If you want to stay and work, for example, then it becomes more difficult, I think.
But as a student
But as a
visas,
student,
yes.
no, it's fine.
It's very easy.
Yeah.
Okay, so then after you arrived, what was your experience during your grant?
Let's see, during my grant, it was great. I made a lot of friends through the Fulbright program, as with all the other UK grantees, and also through their past alumni as well. So they really helped us kind of create that network. And then also at LSE, there were lots of people to meet and lots of clubs to get involved in there. I got involved in the running club when I was there. So for the first time, I kind of became an athlete.
Great.
And outside of that as well, like I got involved in some volunteer opportunities when I was there. For example, I did this one leadership community building thing where we led some groups of inner city high school students through some practice for their GCSE exams.
Okay, wonderful. And so your experience was quite enriching because you sort of shared it between London and Brussels. So what are those benefits between having sort of the both two Fulbright commissions and that experience in itself?
Well, I didn't actually have experience in both London and Brussels. I was mainly in London, actually. And I just came to Brussels afterwards to work.
So it was after, as a Fulbright alumna, as you came into Brussels.
Yeah.
So after your grant, you did end up now getting to Brussels. You did end up staying in Brussels, and you've been here for about 6 years now. And
right.
so, how did that work out?
Well, I was really fortunate in that my boss now had actually gone to the London School of Economics as well, so he wanted to recruit from his alma mater. So I was hired pretty much straight out of my master's degree, which was really quite lucky. But I literally, turned in my dissertation on a Friday, packed on a Saturday, moved on a Sunday, and started work on a Monday.
Okay.
So I was very lucky in how that worked out. But yeah, the visa process, as I said, to get a work visa in Belgium is quite a hurdle. But it's been a great experience, and I'm still working for the same company now, actually.
Wonderful. So being practically a local, do you have any sort of practical tips for living as an American in Belgium for others?
Yes, I think Probably, well, I've got three main tips. The first, I think, big surprise that comes to most Americans is that everything is closed on Sundays. So, that would just be one heads up, is that, do all your grocery shopping on a Saturday. Nothing's going to be open on a Sunday, or maybe some the little shops will, but then everything costs twice as much, Second tip would be that you actually have to hail buses here. The buses aren't just going to stop for you, especially at bus stops where there's multiple buses that stop. You have to actually hail them like taxis. And I've been passed by a bus before. And my third tip would be, when you're really craving that taste of home, there is a Starbucks, and it's at Gare Centrale in Brussels.
Right, good tips. And how about some housing sites and tips for American grantees about to arrive to take advantage of?
Sure. Well, there's actually a really good Facebook group called Brussels Expats, and there's lots of posts about places for rent, and also just general tips and that you can look at. And also you can post questions there saying, I'm arriving in a few months. Can anyone recommend XYZ, whatever you need to know. Also, expats.com is another good resource. It's spelled without the E, so it's just expats.com. And another good resource is if you're maybe moving here with a family and you're going to be here for 8 months or something, and you want something a bit more like of an apartment, then you can check EmoWeb as well. That's a good resource for housing.
And did you also have to register for the commune? At the commune, can you talk about your experience there, or any tips to give grantees coming in? You have to register at the commune if you're staying for any extended period of time. And usually you can call and make an appointment at the commune just to save a really long wait in line, essentially. Okay. But otherwise, bring a book. Okay, great. And what do you like most about living and working in Belgium?
Well, I think the great thing about Belgium, and why I'm still living here now, is that here you really have a great quality of life. In terms of cost of living and what you get for that cost, it's a really high standard. Non-comparable to anywhere else, I think, that I've lived so far. And I've lived in London, Paris, Washington, D.C., Scottsdale, Arizona, and Toronto. So it's really, so far, to me, it's been unparalleled in terms of, that you just have a great apartment for a relatively low price compared to other big cities. You can pretty much walk everywhere, and public transport is pretty reliable as well.
Okay. So now here in Belgium, you work at an EU consultancy agency. So how did your Fulbright experience contribute to your professional development?
Well, I think it contributed a lot. For one, I think it helped me certainly get my foot in the door. Just having Fulbright on my CV definitely helped. Also, like I mentioned, that I switched my topic to focus on genetically modified organisms, and I think that was actually something that got the attention of the consultancy that I'm working for now, because we work on food issues. So it showed that I was already interested in some agro-food issues. So I think in that way it helped in terms of getting the job, but then it's also helped because it really helped me improve my probably my writing skills, my research, analytical thinking skills, and so on.
Okay.
So it's been a great benefit.
Wonderful. And what is the most valuable thing Fulbright has given you as an award recipient up to now? If you look back now, and what do you think is the most valuable thing that you received from your Fulbright award?
Well, the whole year. The whole thing was valuable. The whole experience. Yeah.
Okay, and we just have a question coming in. What benefits do you ever get from being a Fulbright alumnus? And do you ever attend alumni events or mention the title in interviews?
I definitely mention it in interviews. I also mention it every time my company gives a pitch, and we have to talk about our staff and ourselves. So I always mention Fulbright. And we do work for some companies who have recognized it and gone, ooh, at the mention of it. In terms of benefits from an alumni, I am involved in the Fulbright, the Belgian Fulbright Alumni Association. And I've gone to a couple of their networking events. I'm also on the mailing list for the UK Fulbright Alumni Association, so I also have contributed to actually reviewing some of the UK Fulbright applications. Okay,
can you tell us some of the events that you've recently been to, or how active is the alumni
There
group?
was a dinner recently within the last few months of some past Belgian Fulbrighters, so I went to that. I think it's fairly active. They try to meet up regularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, okay, so now you're here in Belgium, and are you planning on staying, and why?
Well, I would say I'm planning on staying for the foreseeable future, but I probably don't plan to retire here.
Okay.
I don't know where I'll end up in the future, but it's a great place to be. So
Okay.
I'll plan to stay for a while. It's also, I mean, it's a good place to raise kids as well, and I have a 1.5-year-old now.
Oh, okay, wonderful, great. And finally, the most important piece of advice that you can give to applicants?
Let's see. My most important piece of advice for applicants would be to really put a lot of effort into the application. You know, just put a lot of research and really think through the whole proposal and try to make it clear and concise, and ensure that the feasibility is there. You know, prove that you've gotten in contact with people, that you have strong recommendations. I think that in a nutshell.
Okay, great. And then we have one last question coming from the Brussels studio. You mentioned expat resources, but what are some tips you have for meeting local Belgians?
Oh, well, that one's a tough one.
Do you have friends that are Belgian?
Yes, those who I've met abroad.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, Belgians can be difficult to get to know. I think, though, if you are actually studying here and integrated into, you know, one of the universities here, then it's probably a lot easier to meet Belgians. I think coming in as an expat working in the EU community, working, in the EU bubble, really, I think it's much harder to get out and meet Belgians and, you know, integrate in the local community. But I think for people who are coming here and studying at a school or something, it should be easier. There's clubs and sports communities and stuff.
Okay. And lastly, I'd like to ask you about the book that you've written and the book tour that you've been doing. So is that local? Are you doing a book tour locally, or is it across Europe? So
No.
So can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. The book is actually called the Brussels Baby Book, so I don't think that many people outside of Brussels, well, outside of Belgium, will have a huge interest in it. And it's a practical guidebook for expats who are going to have a baby in Brussels. Basically, I just found that, from my experience, there was a lot of information out there about having a baby, but a lot of the information was in French, and it was just all over the place, and it took me ages to do all the research myself. And at the end, I just thought, you know, somebody just needs to put all this together in one place and put it out there as a resource. And so nobody else had done it before, and I just thought, well, I guess I'll do it. I've got these 15 weeks of maternity leave, you know.
Great. And how has the book tour been?
Well, it's been pretty good. The book's been selling pretty well, actually. I'm actually planning a couple events in the future. So there's one event coming up towards the end of September on a discussion on career versus baby in Brussels. It's actually been more inspired by the Lean In book by Sheryl Sandberg. I'm actually just interested more in having the debate more than promoting my book as such. But I think it should be an interesting debate, and I would certainly invite anybody who's coming to do a Fulbright in Belgium, if you're around, to come and join us.
And you're having this panel here in Brussels?
Yeah, the panel's going to be in Brussels at the Meridian Hotel.
Wonderful. And when, the date?
On the 29th, Sunday 29th of September at 2 o'clock.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, and we do have one more question coming in, so I think we should take it. What EU-related activities should U.S. Fulbright-Schuman grantees check out if they come to Brussels?
Oh, there's so many. Well, you could, first of all, actually, well, I mean, aside from the obvious, trying to attend, you know, a European Parliament session and this and that, each EU presidency, you know, lasts 6 months, and during their presidency, they tend to have lots of cultural events that go on during that time. So let's see, right now we have the Lithuanian presidency. So you could check the Lithuanian presidency's website, and on that they'll have some cultural listings. And so usually there'll be at least 1 or 2 things in Brussels during that time.
Great.
Check out.
Great, Nina. Thank you for all that useful information. Thank you for joining us here at the Hub, and to all our participants. And so until next time, thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity.